What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the Freudian fuck here, and we are back with episode 165 of the video game therapy series. I was not that this was a concern of mine, but I do run around. I run around privacy circles. I'm concerned with privacy. I consider myself someone who tries to fight the good fight, in that regard. And people often like cite, like when they're talking about Snapchat or something, they're like, oh no, like what if naked pictures of you go online, like as an example of something bad that would happen, or like, someone spies on you and gets these naked pictures of you. Maybe it's, maybe this is just me, but why would I don't even care. It's like, I just don't, my naked body's not that interesting, and I think that would be true for most people. No offense. What is it that you're gonna do? Like, oh, too bad you're gonna blackmail me with. I don't care. It's like that's what a human looks like naked. Okay, it's like, all right, I'm not. There's nothing freakish or weird. Even if there was something freakish or weird, would it even be my fault? Suppose I had like a genetic disability that made, I don't know, like, I don't know. Let's say I was like a completely different color in my, my crotch region or something like that. And that was like supposed to be embarrassing or something. It's like, but that's not even your fault. So it's like, who cares if there's naked pictures of you online? It's embarrassing. Like, yeah, I get it's embarrassing, but is it worth like being blackmailed over? Like, people have gotten blackmailed with these naked pictures. I assume maybe there is some, like, if you have like a caption that's pretty egregious, but I'm assuming here it's just like a naked crotch shot. Why would that be? Why would you care that much if somebody has naked pictures of you? It's like, it's probably weirder on you for like looking at naked pictures of other people online. Um, you know, I just never really understood that as a concept. I'm not saying if you have naked pictures of me somehow that you should post them, or that I'd be happy about that. I wouldn't. I'm not condoning that, but I just think as like an example of something that would be like a world-ending invasion. Like, to me, I think there's, I'm much more concerned with the micro tyranny aspect of privacy violations and not like getting blackmailed with a naked picture. Because again, if someone tried to blackmail me with a naked picture of myself, I literally just be like, I post it. I don't care. Like, what is someone gonna do? Like, show it to children. Great. Now you're a pedophile and you're in jail. It's like, I didn't do that. It's like, what exactly is supposed to be the big danger with a naked picture of me floating around online? I'm not famous. I don't care. Even if I was famous, I don't think I'd be that bothered by it because, even as we've seen, there's probably hundreds of thousands of celebrities who's, naked. They're even probably, showing their bodies on purpose. And it's not like they're going to ruin their career or something like that. I don't know. Maybe if I was, had a job or something that I really cared about and it would somehow jeopardize that. But again, even that, it's like, even if let's say I was working a desk job as like I don't know, an Excel monkey or something, and someone's like, "Oh, Greg, we saw your naked pictures online," and it's like, why are you looking at my dick online, bro? Like, even if you could find naked pictures of me, why are you looking at it? Like, go get out of here. It's like, it's none of your business. I don't give a shit. I don't know. So I always thought that was funny that like people would use that and cite that as like a horrible example of what could happen. That never seemed to bother me that much. I don't know. And it's not that I'm not. I am mildly uncomfortable with nudity. It's not like I'm, one of these free range people that just runs around with their dick out all the time. I'm not saying that, but I just don't see what would be that shocking. It's like, what did you think was under my clothes anyway? It's like, I don't know. I just I don't get the shock here. I guess it's kind of embarrassing that it wasn't something I didn't intend to, but even like, even if you post like a half finished blog of mine, I'd probably be more embarrassed by that, like these crappy, unfinished, like pothead thoughts than I would be, a picture of my dick. So, I don't know. I always thought that was funny that like, I don't know, I just wasn't bothered by the naked pictures of me online. Go ahead and post it. I don't care. That was a joke. Don't. If you somehow got a naked picture of me, don't post it, please. Anyway, um, I suppose similar to that, actually not similar to that at all, but kind of on the joking part of that. I think I do search and kind of always looking for a punchline. I do try to make things funny, and that is kind of one avenue under which I try to expel a lot of psychological entropy, to use that word, is to try and use humor. And usually if something there is something funny about it, I usually try to focus on that, which can be distracting, I think, especially if you're trying to like get work done or something or be focused. And I'm too busy trying to think of what's funny about a situation. But I do think it is a good and certainly a fun way to live. And I usually don't like when the punchline is given for me. It's not that I don't like comedy. I think I do. There's probably some comedians that I would enjoy, but by and large, I don't. I think jokes written for me take a lot of the fun out of my hands. Because the fun for me is kind of finding the joke and finding what's funny about it to me. Versus other people's comedy is usually what's funny to them, and that is kind of what is recommended to comics. It's like, all right, find out what's funny to you, and then share that with other people. Which is why I don't think I'd do great at comedies, because I just don't think what I find funny would be funny to other people. I think they wouldn't see it the same way. But that isn't really the point. The point isn't to have mass appeal, for me at least. It's to enjoy and to deal with kind of the absurdity and miracle of life, is to find things that are funny to me, and they're funny, and enjoy that, versus just because someone else doesn't think it's funny, that actually is good. It's like, fine, it wasn't for them, it was for you, and it's like, I enjoyed that, I thought it was funny. That's all that's what matters, really. In my view, at least. But anyway, I do find that I am pretty consistently always looking for a punchline. So anyway, get this fucking loser out of here. Get out of here, punk. Yeah. Anyway, I'll move on to something else here. Yeah, I was feeling like this the other day, but I guess I'll just pretend like I am feeling like it now. I suppose I kind of am. There was a couple days, or probably a week or so, where I was running around feeling like I was mourning the loss of something, like something or someone had died, and I kept kind of trying to find, like, if there was a period of transition, or something that I had lost, or even like in extremely abstract terms, like, was there any kind of loss that I went through that makes me feel this kind of mourning way? And I don't know, maybe it was some supernatural spirit deity, sharing their loss with me and just kind of making me feel like shit, which would be pretty stupid, because if I'm still alive, why would you torment me with whatever your problems are? But I don't know. It was an odd feeling, and I kind of it persisted for a few days, and I jotted it down because I was interested in trying to understand what that could be. And I'm sure the psychoanalysts out there, I guess speaking of Freud, would have lots to say. But I don't know. Psychoanalysis, I think, is always kind of silly, because I do think it's not that the human mind is incomprehensible. I think there are many things about the human mind that you can comprehend. Like the weight, the size, perhaps even the number of neurons. It's really just like when the connections of those neurons, not only the amount of that being in the billions and trillions of possible potential like combinations and whatnot, like that is that becomes incomprehensible just out of sheer volume. But then even like the associations between neuron firings and meaning, right? Like even applying meaning to neurons firing, I think, is even somewhat incomprehensible. Even like a study where they might flash a picture of an elephant, and you're looking at a picture of an elephant, and then a certain pattern of neurons fire up. Who's to say that's like an elephant and not just like a elephant looking thing, right? Like maybe that'll, and and I guess does it matter? In some ways no, but in some ways yes too, because it's like, if you can be shown something that absolutely isn't an elephant, and yet elephant still lines up, you could fault that as like a shortcoming of our brains, which I guess you'd have an argument there. But also then it's like, then you can't really call that like the elephant firing, because it's just the elephant like firing. It's simply the representation of the elephant that is firing, and not an elephant itself. Because that's really all the brain can do is that maybe is what the real miracle of the brain is just it can create representations of, existing things and non-existing things, which I think what makes it so I guess so fascinating is that that nothing that happens in the brain is real, but yet like it can represent both real and ethereal, finite and infinite concepts. Despite being very discrete in nature. And that to me, I think, is you know a mystery that will be left unsolved for a long time. I don't think it's as simple as just throwing scale at these neural nets, because even if you were to like actually scale up the number of neurons, and I guess if you did a lot of reductionist math, you could probably say that a bunch of our uh, neurons dedicated to like motor control and perception and smell and stuff are worthless. But also, I don't think you can really. I think if you just remove all of the like human, specifically human, like animal human aspects of, the functioning of our brains, and just leave like, I guess the functional, like mathematical, do this and do that aspects. It's like I think part of the intrigue is that like the smell, the touch, the feel is all still extremely relevant to the computational whatevers. And you can't just like gloss over that and say, well, it doesn't matter because our robots don't need to smell anything. And even the connections between smells and ideas are still, the number two has a certain smell, or a certain touch or feel or something like that. Like those concepts are going to be completely disregarded by any kind of, like true like computer brain system. Whereas in the human system, it's inextricably linked. I'm sure that's not like I'm sure there's not a ton of cross firings between the olfactory part of your brain and the one that processes numbers, but there probably is still non-zero. I don't think it's entirely that discrete. It is kind of a all exist on a continuum, but either way, it is interesting. I don't know how I got talking about that at all, but whatever. Um, I I guess if you can't tell by this whole series, I guess I do love I love questions. Mostly, probably more so asking them than answering them. Although there is a certain satisfaction in answering a question. Just in like feeling that you have like something to say is sometimes satisfying or gratifying in some way. Even if what you are going to say, what you're going to answer with is inherently very limited, or perhaps even flawed or wrong. It still is satisfying, I suppose, to be able to answer questions. But I do think asking questions is more fun for me, especially seeing. It's not like I watching other people struggle with questions, but I do like asking questions that really make people think. I know that sounds fucking stupid, but I do, and I think it's not that they're like deep stoner questions or whatever. But just questions mostly, not about like, do you think God's real, or like, something like that. I think it's more of like, how do people think about themselves? It's almost like they're, how do they conceive of their own skills, ambitions, concepts? Like, how do ideas in their own mind look to them? And to me, that's interesting because I don't know, I think most people really forego thinking about their own concepts of things. Kind of the brain looping back on itself. But to me, that's kind of it's a very enticing idea. Is that the brain is this like real thing is thinking about itself, and in a it's almost like trying to simulate itself and thinking about how it's thinking. Um, and not even from like a mechanistic or psychological point of view, but even from a very fuzzy, what are ideas and concepts and words that come up when people try to describe their own thinking. I don't know. I just find that interesting, but I am very much a lover of questions. I guess the harder the better in some ways, just because it is, it's always a challenge. I did always like, I mean, I like doing math, and there always was some fun. I'll say very some fun because it's also pegged me as a loser, but I did always kind of like testing sometimes. In grade school especially, mostly because I knew I would do well, and that I could, and I knew it was very predictable and easy. I'd probably hate testing if it was hard questions, and if it was questions that like are the ones that I plague myself with, and like I wouldn't know how to answer. But it's like math and stuff. Those are questions I know I can get right, and there's some satisfaction in that. But I think I've learned to have, or I've developed, not even learned, I've developed some enjoyment in asking questions that I really can't answer and can instead just kind of flounder around with for 30 minutes. And kind of give my brain stuff to chew on, in the meantime. And well, it might practically seem useless because I'm not really adding anything by just like aimlessly blabbering about a question, and then I might come back to the question and think something entirely different the next time. But I don't think answering the questions is really the point. I think, a question might be an avenue for another question, and that might be really what the universe boils down to, is just kind of the right question, or the right won't really necessarily be an answer. It'll just be the ultimate question. Uh, Probably not, but that that is one. Anything's possible technically, I suppose, and that is one of the many infinite possibilities. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I'll move on from that, but um, let's see. What do I have on my list here? Um, hmm, let's see. My, I guess my this is a philosophy, or a rumination on uh, I guess the development of code. Um, like I think it's not that this is, oh fucking shit, that was an accident. Um, Damn it. All right, well that's gonna complicate things. Uh, what if when we create, in all of our haste to create, God through programming, which I think is silly, we end up just kind of creating a very get the fuck out of here. Damn it. All right, hold on. Gotta enter gamer mode here. Get me the fuck out of here. God damn it. This is probably the worst place you can possibly be. By the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing, this is I've done this all out of order. I've done this all wrong. So this is the bottom of the nether, and I'm trying to improve the rates on my wither skeleton farm. Uh, and I've suspected that the problem has been guys spawning down here. So I'm trying to spawn proof this area, to improve the rates up there, which has totally not worked. Shite. Totally hasn't worked. And I ended up slabbing it over before clearing out these technically spawnable blocks, like down at y equals 2 and 3. So I was going through and trying to remove them. Again, I probably should have just used more TNT to blow it all up in hindsight, but hindsight's always 2020. Um, I'm not even going to talk. I don't even want to talk about technology. Technology is, as interesting as it is to ruminate about. Again, I think the philosophies that underlie technology are always more interesting than the technology itself. But some days it just gets stale, because it's like, as high minded and as as all the potentialities of the technology, all the promises and potentials that they could deliver. What are people actually doing with the technology? Making and watching porn, making and watching video games or TV or slop content. Like 99% of all of these technologies are just used for completely brainless, stupid aims. So like as fascinating as it is that like we can do all this, with the transistor and all this thing, we end up just kind of using it for what end up being very, very stupid like things. So it's not even like, I don't know. It's not like we're on the cusp of inventing teleportation. Like we're not doing anything like that. We're just making bigger and bigger AI models, and finding. I guess speaking of, I guess I will talk about this a little bit, but I'm noticing that the big tech companies are beginning to turn on the propaganda machine for AI in data centers, and I think there is an assumption that they're kind of wrong with. So I learned recently about, I'll just kind of say the history of propaganda, I suppose. So it actually does relate to Freud. So I'll come full circle here. So Freud, his whole theory was all these like repressed sexual urges, and he thought that like, I guess originally in his early career, he thought that like you could somehow tame or, kind of control humans through, their underlying impulses, and he felt like humans naturally had these very distasteful, kind of ugly impulses, mostly sexual in nature, and you could to some degree kind of control them. And if you could get that under control, you control the human. But then he kind of gave up and were like, humans suck. They're stupid. They, don't do anything. His nephew, which I might be butchering his name, but it was like Edward Bernays, I think, or Edward Bernard or Bernays, something like that. Um, he took some of Freud's ideas, but not obviously not all of them, but he still kind of did understand that humans have these base innate impulses. And, through that, you can kind of leverage and poke and prod at these impulses, get people to do what they want instead of like people acting rationally. Cause that was, I guess prior to Bernays's, theories going mainstream, the idea was that like you would just use rationality. You would just like use logic and reason. Humans couldn't argue with that. And then you would just, they would just do what they're going to do based off that. Freud had this whole sexual angle or whatever. But Bernays really just like essentially tried to really exploit, humans' desires for their aim. So I think one of his earlier assignments was um, he was working for this like cigarette company or tobacco company, and it was socially taboo for women to smoke. So they basically came to Bernays and was like, how can we get girls to how do we get like ladies or whatever to smoke? And so he like designed this whole like essentially a propaganda campaign. And propaganda actually didn't have such a negative connotation until the Nazis used it. So prior to that, propaganda was just like compelling people to do X, Y, Z. But post-Nazi, propaganda was kind of a bad word. So Bernays really like I want to say it, like kind of invented the term PR, like public relations. So that but it is really the same idea. It's not like it's any different. Propaganda is public relations. It is the same thing, and that is coming from the founder of public relations himself, because he, once called it propaganda, but because people didn't like that term and they associated with the Nazis, he had to, switch it up. So that's it. Really is what it is. But PR is propaganda. Um, but with his smoking campaign, he like designed and had these like debutante girls, like they all had cigarettes like on hand, and then at this very dramatic moment during this like public rally for something, they would pull out these cigarettes, and they were kind of branded as like these freedom cigarettes, or whatever, which again, it's completely like fabricated. It's not like the girls themselves had that idea, or there's some martyr that like believed in that. It does not at all. It's just like it was literally some dude that told the girls to do this, and then they were gonna in post they were gonna brand it all as like these freedom sticks or something. Well, it totally worked, and ended up spiking sales. So then all these companies end up going to Bernays and like, okay, how can we get him to do this? How can we get him to buy more detergent? How can we get him to do Betty Crocker? And the funny thing about the Betty Crocker was even that like they were doing these focus groups and trying to figure out how to sell more cake batter, and they were selling mostly like housewives. So this was with the time when usually only one person was working. It was the man was away, the home was at the wife was at home with the kids. But they found that like women didn't like the prepackaged like cake batter or whatever, because it wasn't as participatory. So in order to like sell better, they just like added the whole like add an egg thing. Like originally the batter didn't need an egg; it just needed like water. But they reformulated it so that you could add an egg, and apparently that was enough for housewives to go, oh, I feel more participatory. All of it is really just kind of trying to weaponize human impulses and emotions in order to buy and sell things. Um, which I think is kind of which is the problematic angle to me. It's not that you can't like understand or study or even like know how to exploit said human inefficiencies, because I don't think anyone's ever argued that humans are like efficient, in whatever means that is. I suppose our brains and bodies are efficient to some degree, but really that's not like we're designed for efficiency of math or something. It's like we're totally not. We're kind of you know general purpose agents, I suppose. But I think weaponizing that just to like buy and sell things, I think was the real sin there. It wasn't that, understanding how emotion plays a role in our decision making. That much is obvious, but then kind of exploiting that was really where, I guess where the problematic actions and stuff began. Um, but I don't know. I think in a separate world where he maybe used that, where people could understand their emotional attachments to things, things would be a lot better and a lot different. But I don't know. I did learn about that recently, and I thought that was quite interesting. Of course, it doesn't really change my view on buying things. I've said before that no matter what your problem is, buying something is probably not the answer. Again, the exception being if you're hungry, you could probably buy a sandwich. But any problem beyond like an immediate physical need and something you would have had to buy anyway, aka you would have bought the sandwich anyway because you had to buy something. You don't Buying something's not going to solve your problems. So that is still the axiom that I run with. So if you don't need it, you don't buy it. Anyway, I totally forgot where I started with this, but I'm gonna move on to something else. Um, yeah, let's see. um, let's see. Hmm. Yeah. Oh, I think I knew what I was talking about with this. So I said that I began with this saying that the AI companies have started to turn on the propaganda machine. I think older, like I'll just say boomers or Gen Xers or whatever, uh, respond in much more different ways to advertising than I think people in my generation do. And I know there's still idiots that like just see ads as like, well, like business got to make money somehow. But I think many younger people are just like they see an ad and they're immediately just repulsed by it. Partially because the frequency of which is just so high that it's hard not to see them and just like be sick of them because there's just so many everywhere. It's like I wonder what percentage of my eye space, just like my FOV uh on like a on any given day or is like occupied by like crappy ads. Because I think even when I'm driving, there's ads on the road. There's people wear ads as t-shirts. Like they literally have advertisements for shit on their chest. Can't so that's like taking up eye space. So I just wonder what percentage of my like time and eye space is being taken up by some crappy ad, and it just drives me nuts because I just don't think they, you know, having to take out an ad for something kind of admits that what it is not a necessary thing. I'm not saying you can't like food advertisements necessarily are stupid, but in some ways they are because people have to eat. Now, the whole point of the food advertisement is so someone will buy your food versus buying somebody else. But people are going to buy food no matter what, and like the ad is simply trying to compel them away from a different person, but they're still going to eat food. Other stuff like any other product really is you're trying to get somebody to buy something that they've never heard about and that they don't need, and you're kind of inventing a need that they didn't have. Because the thing is, if you needed it, you would have like actively searched for it, and at that point you don't need an ad, because if you're just actively searching for a product to solve a problem that you have, like you don't need an advertisement, right? And like an advertisement not going to remind you that you have this problem. The problem is important enough, you're going to have the problem on hand no matter what. So like ad is hard. That's why I think advertising is morally bankrupt, is because you're trying to compel people to buy stuff that they simply don't need. And because if they needed them, they would have sought it out, and they would have tried to go get it. So by taking out an ad, you're kind of admitting that what you're selling is pointless, or at the very least is not. Like food itself, like it still needs to be eaten. People still need to eat food, but you're still trying to like get them not to eat something else. By way of shoving it in their face. So I think older people are much less turned off by this. I mean, I know boomers that'll like literally sing the jingles to commercials, which I could never even imagine myself to. Because the moment I hear a little jingle, I'm filled with rage. I'm not. No part of me wants to sing along with the Liberty Mutual. I'm never going to get I don't. I would rather go uninsured and die because of getting struck by lightning than to take out even a $1 policy with Liberty Mutual. I just have no, and it's simply because of their advertising. Like it's created such a repulsive force inside of me that I would never, I would do anything besides take out insurance with Liberty Mutual. That's true of everything. But either way, regardless, I'm seeing advertisements like on the side of the roads now, because that kind of is the only way I get exposed to ads now. I don't see ads on my computer because I run Arch Linux and I watch YouTube from the command line if I ever do. And the only advertisements I see in my writings from people are people advertising their own newsletter, which I don't see as self-promotion is a little bit of a different thing. It's like if I told you to go subscribe to my Patreon or something, that isn't as bad because you've already shown that you're engaging with my material. So I'm simply notifying you if you want more of what you've already seen and shown that you're interested in, then you can go here. Whereas like if you're getting an ad for uh, you know, I guess life insurance, where it's like you didn't show anybody or indicate that you were interested in life insurance. Like that was just being thrust onto you. But if you're already watching, a creator, of some kind, and they, promote themselves, to me, that's a little bit different than, being promoted by, promoting something that you didn't even know existed or weren't. It was totally random. It's like Shopify just randomly is like, I wasn't even thinking about this, and now you're jamming this, into my head. I need to get an online real estate. Like, what is this crap? Either way, all this to say, I'm seeing I'm seeing advertisements saying how data centers are good and how AI is future. All this AI, pro AI advertising and things. And I think they're, companies that have invested, this much into AI kind of realize how big their bet is. I'm hypothesizing here. They may have totally different names. I don't know. And trying to like see what they can stir up from the propaganda machine. Because anytime the U.S. government has needed support for a war or support for some stupid policy that is going to backfire, anytime they've always started up the propaganda machine. And I think it's obvious enough to me now when they're doing something like this is because I don't know, it could maybe not be maybe directly propaganda, maybe they have some other motive, but at the very least, whatever it is that they're claimed to be doing with this, I don't buy it. I just don't believe in their altruism at all. So trying to frame data centers as this good thing, I think most people my age like understand that this is complete bullshit, and that is quite literally as blatant propaganda as you can get. Like I'm not buying that data centers are good. I don't care that this advertisement says they bring jobs to this area. I don't believe it at all. And there's nothing you can do to tell me, even if you have some bogus data that was generated by, again, probably some bogus nonprofit that you fund under the table with Jeffrey Epstein money. I don't care. I don't care what that thing says. It's almost like a universal axiom to me at this point that like that is bad. I don't want that. It's bad for everybody involved. It doesn't help anybody. And I don't know if they know that and like understand the like repulsion that people my generation have, and they're just trying to see if they can kind of pull the arms and levers of the propaganda machine to get people like me to turn around. It's either that or they're just like kind of like bragging. They're just like, we know you can't, we know you hate it, but like now you're just gonna have to see ads for it. And it's like you can either just like keep hating it. At some point, it's gonna be easier for you to actually like side with us and enjoy it. Which to that I say, game on, fucker. I'll go the rest of my life. I don't care. I'm never going on your side. So I don't really know what the aim is, whether like these ads are supposed to change people's minds or like what exactly these are supposed to be doing. Like who are they for? Like what's the demographic of a data center ad supposed to be? Like is it a boomer who's supposed to like be happy that his retirement portfolio is now locked up in data centers that like aren't going to pay out? Like, is he supposed to be like happy and kind of ride the ship and ride the lows with them? Because ultimately, like they're going to be held holding the bag. So I'm kind of wondering. I'm just wondering what the, like what the PR agencies with that messaging, what their thought is. Because I certainly don't think they're appealing to people like me. Like I would have, there'd be no reason why that advertisement should be directed towards me at all. Like I don't have any money. I'm not investing in data centers. I hate them. And even if I had money, I would do everything I can to do the opposite of that. So they're clearly not meant for me. So I'm just still trying to think through what they could be, what would be, who their exact demographic audience is, and what is it trying to accomplish. So I don't know. It was interesting, but I do think that the machine will stay on. We're going to see more and more ads for AI and all this other stuff, and they're going to try and just make people tired. That is kind of the other, I'll say the other op that I think I'm kind of noticing is, there's obviously just a glut of information, period. And I think it's, part of what, I think the glut is on purpose. I think like, this is there's some kind of CIA operation here. Part of what is being done is that if we just flood the internet full of so much information, so many things that are true, false, you're just kind of going to get people that are confused. And, a confused person is less likely to take like strong action because, by definition, they don't really know what's going on. So I think by trying to confuse people with, with rhetoric and stats and all this and made up stuff, like I think that is kind of what, one of the, psychological operations is. It's kind of try to befuddle people so that they're so confused. There's too much conflicting information. My aunt says data centers are good. Everything I look at says, I don't, like they're trying to just confuse people and get them to just kind of go along with whatever. Because like if you're confused, you're probably less likely to take a side. Whereas, I think in my case, I'm confused about some things, sure. I still have questions, but ultimately I'm still going to be very dogmatic on whatever I believe, even, until, I think I'm proven wrong beyond a reasonable doubt, which, in this case, I'm not sure there's any way you could reverse my reasonable doubt about the litany of accusations against these AI companies and the like. So I don't know. I think that is kind of one strategy by whoever it is that's controlling the levers now. Because it's not like I even know, but my question is, do I need to know who the enemy is, right, to like protect myself? To some extent, maybe, but also like, fine, I can just kind of like widen my threat model, right? Like that's kind of the whole. That is, one I guess cybersecurity lesson is like, all right, you got to think about your threat model. In this case, it's like almost anybody that isn't me. It's like, anybody that's trying to get my data for any reason. No. Okay. I don't care. It's like, I'm not going to test the trustworthiness of who should I give this data to. No, I'm not giving any data to anyone for any reason, period. And to me, that's like a much safer way to go about like, being an online, denizen of the internet than to like try and validate the trustworthiness. And so I actually only trust Google servers. I don't trust Meta servers. It's like, don't trust any of them. Just zero trust. Like trust, like literally the only way that your data is safe is with you. Besides that, it was probably going to be abused for something. So unless you control all of it, there's liability there, which to me I think is an easier way to go about trying to mitigate that threat model than that. I mean, because other people have different strategies like obfuscation. It's like, all right, if I just put enough garbage out there, like they're not going to know what's actually mine and what's not. I suppose that there's probably some effectiveness to that, but then at the same time, you're still kind of the real data that you have is buried in there somewhere. And like I think with enough intel, you could probably get some some insights out of that, patterns out of that if you can remove the noise. But even so, that to me represents a bigger threat than just eliminating any possible. It's like how do you avoid a soy contamination in your food? It's like, all right, don't eat anything at all that might contain, like, avoid it entirely. Just like completely remove it, period. Don't like, have to individually investigate every little thing and see, well, should I send my data here? It's like, no, assume everything is malicious and do whatever you can to only have it in your hands. Which does, I guess, burden you some more by giving you, the sole responsibility for your own things. But that is kind of the world we live in now, and that is kind of that is one of our generational challenges: is how do we kind of defend ourselves and our identities in many ways, only because our our digital activities are invariably tied to our identities, and then will be used against us, if not already, or I guess we're seeing that already. That is just as important as protecting kind of your physical body. You wouldn't just let any stranger fondle your balls. It's like, all right, well then I'm not just gonna let any old fucking server get my data. Like I'm not doing that. And I realize that that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous comparison, but in many ways, people live their lives more on the internet than they do in real life. So it's like, is it that crazy? It's like, your data is kind of the equivalent of your balls, or breast or whatever, whatever equivalent. There's no women that's gonna watch this shit, so I guess I could say balls safely. Uh, anyway, anyway, I guess that puts another meaning on the whole, my balls are on the internet thing. A picture of my balls. In that case, I do care. I guess if I'd almost rather have a naked picture of me online than like me leaking my data. And my example earlier about the whole naked picture thing wasn't that I'm okay with my naked picture being online. That wasn't the point of my argument. The point was, if somebody had already acquired it and was trying to use it as blackmail, I wouldn't care because, again, I don't care. It's like, what are you gonna do? This is a naked human body. Congratulations. Most people look something like that if you take off their clothes. So it's like, congratulations. You're not breaking any new ground with this. The difference being the data is something that I can secure and is ongoing. It's an ongoing threat. It's as if there's newer body parts being exposed, and I don't trying to avoid that. Because their data says so much about you, and is obviously extremely valuable to these companies. So I suppose, yeah, I guess with that in mind, I'd still rather have a picture of my balls online than my data. But anyway, I don't know. I guess people also like try to trivialize. They're like, well, what's so important about my data? It's like, well, nothing really. But the thing is, like, if you sacrifice every little, if you sacrifice an inch, you're going to give up a mile. So it's like you have to have a line in the sand and draw it and defend it. And so it's not that it's the principle of the thing. It's not that, like, me sending an HTTP request to a server, asking to watch a cat video is, going to be the detriment and is going to be the reason we are, are in a cyberpunk dystopia. Obviously not. Like, I realize that, that is benign. But, the thing is, it's like, in the same way it's benign to, like, probably, take half of a weed edible, once every 6 months. There's a difference between that and then, like, being a chronic stoner. There's, like, obviously degrees to which it becomes an issue. And, again, you boil the frog, again and again. It's like if you start with a cat video and then it becomes everything, eventually you're going to lose control of your ability to have your data and own it. And by the time something comes along that you actually do want to protect and you don't want people to have, you're not going to have the infrastructure, the habits, you're not going to have any of the know-how in place to actually keep that information secure. So it's not the cat video that you're watching that is the reason why you should be worried about your web traffic. It isn't that. It always comes. It's not like I'm making something up here, some doomsday scenario. It's been shown time and time again. It's a fact of history at this point that data once sacrificed will eventually be abused. Data that's collected will eventually be abused. That's like it's well known. It's going to happen. But either way, it's just I guess all this to advocate for people taking ownership and being intentional about their data sharing habits. And I guess if you're really choosing sides here, I guess if I think tech companies will become more impartial, more partial and less impartial. You really just want to side with being, I'm a pro Palantir type of guy. I don't care if they have all my data or something. It's like, then fine. Like, be prepared to be thrown out. Like, at some point, like, your utility for them is going to end. So, like, right now you might be just a happy consumer. They're glad to have you. It's a nice mutual relationship. You give Palantir your data. They scratch your back or whatever you're actually getting out of this exchange. I'm not sure. I guess it's easier for you not to care, but I guess that's it. You're getting convenience. At some point, it's they want to exploit you, and you're not gonna have any recourse against them because you've been just laying down this whole time. So especially in an age where it feels, the autonomy of any individual seems extremely limited. Like, people feel very challenged in their ability to have domain over the things that they do and they say. It becomes all the more important to, again, really fight for every last inch that you have in terms of what you can control and what you're what you can keep to say is yours and not allow for others to have. So your data being one. So because at no point you're only going to be useful for them, if you're in one of their camps or something. So and if they have all their data, they're going to find you. That's a bit hyperbolic, but you get the point. Um, anyway, let's move on to something I guess less dystopian. Maybe is there a happy-go-lucky haiku I have on here, or is this all just nihilistic? Is this all just very depressing stuff? I do. It is hard to, I guess, find environments in this way, but it is something I do think is positive. I do want to find, and I yearn to be in environments where there are people that are better than me, and ideally better than me in, like individual facets, not in a way that like I'm a loser and I'm like worthless, in this setting, but just in the way that each person individually might challenge me in some way. I think if I'm in a room and whether it's true or not, I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room by a mile. It doesn't feel like where I need to be. I feel like I need to be among other people who are like, okay, these people are also extremely bright. They also have very thoughtful things to say, et cetera, et cetera. I'm challenged in that regard. But at the same time, if I'm also in the room and I physically mog everybody in there, nobody in there can bench 135. Not to not to mention a squat. Then I also kind of feel like I'm in the wrong room. I want to find a room where you can kind of point to each person, and each person kind of bests me in one way. Like this person might be physically better than me in this regard. This person might study this a lot more than me. They might know way more. And I think one way to kind of ameliorate that is to kind of run with the assumption that whatever room that you're in, there are people that are better than you at everything. Because that probably is true. Like if you just pick a random group of people, and let's say you pick a random group of fat people where I am certain that I physically mog everybody in that room. I'm certain that each of those people have specific skills and specific, knowledge that they're much better than me at. Now, part of it's like, all right, do they know more about, sourdough bread than me? It's like, okay, I don't really care about that. Ideally, I'd want to be bested in ways and things that I care about, which, are, many are supposed to be physical rigor, psychological rigor, intellectual challenge, gamesmanship. Like someone who's really good at chess or something might be very interesting because I'm not good at chess, and I think it behoove me to be around people that are better than me. So I don't know. It's just, I guess maybe trying to assume that people are, whatever room I am in, assume that there are people that are better than me, in there, because that is, I guess, very true on one level, but also assume it's in ways that you do care about, which I guess is the harder part for me, because it's like I don't, I may not care about the ways that you might be better than me in ways that I just think are stupid. Like you might know more about B2B SaaS sales, but I really don't care about that, and I think that's stupid. So that might be my fault, I guess. But I don't really care that you're a better B2B SaaS salesman than me. A salesman at all, I think I would not be very remiss to say that I don't care about their skills. Not saying that selling isn't important, but just selling has become so synonymous with just you don't need it. It's like I think the act of sales in general just kind of to me indicates that this is an unnecessary good. And you didn't need it, because if you needed it, you would have, like, I guess it's like the argument's like, well, you didn't know that you needed it. But then again, it's like, if you didn't know that you needed it, did you need it? It's like, oh, I didn't know I needed this, this slingshot that shoots water balls. It's like, okay, you totally didn't need that though. It's like, yeah, you're just kind of now convincing yourself in hindsight that you needed that. Anything that you truly did need, I guess maybe if like, it's like you were unknowingly suffering from, cancer or something like that, and then like someone sells you a cancer solution. But even then, it's like at that point, like I needed to know that, usually by a doctor or something that's more, not a salesman that's going to tell me what my problems are. Because that is kind of what I think, would be the other side of that, is like if somebody's able to diagnose an issue I have that I'm unaware of, and sell me the solution to that, that's one thing. But I just don't know that, no offense to salesmen, that there is anything that they would be able to remotely diagnose me with, whether that's like a physical ailment or like a inefficiency or something that I'm doing. I doubt that they're going to be able to, look at me or look at what I do and say, well, this is where you're deficient and here you're going to need this. And then for me to actually be convinced that that's a genuine solution to a genuine problem that I have. Most of the time, it's stuff that isn't real. There aren't real problems. Like these problems just don't exist. Like, or the problems exist on purpose. It's like people that's selling website things. It's like, well, do you have trouble making websites? It's like, well, yeah, I do. Here's a service that does it for you. It's like, okay, well, the problem isn't really that you need like a website made and don't know how to do it. Like, there's already a glut of that information online. It's like, I think you're just kind of, justifying that in hindsight. You're not really preemptively solving a problem. I don't know. Just to me, sales is just synonymous with like unnecessary. So, I don't know. I guess maybe we'll see if time changes my mind. As it does many things, but hopefully not about that because I really think that stuff is stupid. Anyway, I'll cut it off there. Thanks for watching. Peace out, and I will see you in the next one.